and some folks have unfortunately are no longer part of the company anymore. But we won't be going into the details, but send them our best wishes, folks that we liked working with a lot. Yeah, will do, Sassy. Hey, yeah. Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, folks. I'll be kicking off this meeting today. If you don't know me, I usually lurk. I lurk a lot. Signal engineering director, but pretty passionate about open source. So I'm really excited to talk to folks and talk to the open source viewer folks in particular. I'm usually in the CI/CD mines and GitHub a lot. Yep, no problem, Sassy. Sorry we can't talk about details, but yep.
Check, check. My voice wasn't working either. Strange.
Can hear you now.
Great. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Philip. Okay, well, just wait a second for VoiceStats to appear. See, Rolly, you have VoiceStat now. Hello.
Sorry that I was slightly late there. A little bit too caught up in tweaking something.
Okay, well, now that we have everyone, at least most everyone, on voice, hurrah, wanted to go over the agenda at a really high level, and then, of course, we'll have time for an open forum, talk about any topics that folks have at the end there. Wanted to talk about a little proposal I had to making tweaks to open source, help improve open source contribution processes. Also wanted to give some updates. Geens, I believe, has some updates on Forever FPS and the status of that release. And then we'll kind of go into kind of open forum. So I guess first item is that I've just punched up this Canny issue here, which goes over some ideas I have for working more quickly with open source, or working in a better fashion with open source. They're mostly small things. I can go over those bullet points one by one. One is that we are working on kind of an open Discord, and one of those channels will be a place for contributors and maintainers to talk to one another about open source development efforts. So that can include viewer development questions and questions relating to GitHub, what's going on in the version control world. Another thing is we have a contributing markdown file inside of the viewer, and we have the old wiki documentation. A lot of it's out of date. We'd like to give that a little bit of a facelift. Yeah, are folks still having issues with voice?
We have a couple of stragglers, yes.
Yeah. Interesting that it's a Vivox. Yeah, Cutie, that's right. We would like to have a public Discord and a little like dedicated channel or two inside of it dedicated to open source development, contributor, maintainer, collaboration. WebRTC, we don't have a date yet, but we do want to be pushing that out early this year. Early being up to interpretation, but I would like to see it go out. Hopefully, we would talk about scheduling something and let folks know ahead of time, potentially towards the end of Q1, if that's possible. It is dependent on a lot of things like, okay, are people still using the old versions of viewers, right? Like Philip said, there's a bunch of gates that we need to wait to pass before we can consider going forward and talking about scheduling an actual date in the future. Another thing that I would like to mention is that right, yep, good point, Beck. We need to make sure that it's definitely attractive to move to the newer viewers in WebRTC and new releases. So one thing that I'm hoping will help out with third-party viewers is moving to a more regular release cadence. This is something that we tried to do when we adopted something close to Git Flow last year, but the issue is that we had a bunch of changes kind of waiting in the wing that had been sitting outstanding for quite a while. These maintenance branches had hundreds of commits. Those all got merged into the develop branch all at once, and a lot of those changes are fantastic, but it means that we have like this large delta kind of waiting to be deployed. In the future, we'd like to move to kind of a more regular release cadence so that if you're contributing a pull request to our upstream, there's some type of reasonable expectation for that getting shipped, right? Like you will be able to contribute that change and then expect it to be shipped in Second Life within a matter of, like a month or two. Right now, there's a bunch of changes that have been sitting around unreleased for over, I think, like 11 months or so. So that means we're going to be shooting for a monthly cadence and moving to a versioning scheme that's like 2025.03 for March or 2025.04 for April.
And just to kind of be clear, for those who hear monthly and are thinking, oh God, this is going to suck on the merges, we're really trying to make these into like more digestible releases, more generally, and kind of going to Signal's point here, like not letting things sitting in the wings for too long. This also includes things like performance improvements that we're trying to get out the door, various different bug fixes, and so on. Yeah, what Signal said there. Bigger things that may have to be waiting in the wings for a little bit longer, such as like projects, like actual significant projects. We'll figure that out when we have those on hand. And GLTF mesh upload is an example of one of those things where we would probably move that into something that's going on in parallel to whatever is currently being released. But, you know, that's one of those things that we'd have to feel out once we get to that point. Just using GLTF as an example there, not confirming anything.
Chris, I think there is a feedback.secondlife.com request for the viewer-based AOs. And we did try this week to do a bit of a cleanup on the public roadmap. And we're trying to get that backlog groomed. And so the votes there really do matter. If you vote on something, we do use that to figure out what we're going to be working on next. For example, you know, we released 2K based on Mesh. That was the top voted issue, 600 or 400 votes on it. But the vote count really does matter. We do look at those. Yep, Kitty, I think that you should reach out to me to talk about those RLV contributions in World or in email or Discord. Okay, well, I guess we do have some updates about the status of Forever FPS. I know, Geens, I know you talked a little bit about that in chat, but is there anything that you wanted to comment on regarding the current state of that next release?
Yes, so we are currently kind of in the home stretch right now in terms of getting Forever FPS out. We're trying to get, we're pretty much down to showstoppers, maybe a couple of high priority issues here and there that we're trying to get over the wall. A build has recently been cut to QA. Atlas posted that build a little bit higher up. Give me 1 sec and I'll grab that for y'all so you can take a look for yourself. Tell your friends we're trying to get, yep, Atlas beat me to it. Tell your friends we're trying to get as much feedback as we can on this at this point, particularly around the visual changes and so on. This build does include all the latest water tweaks that have went in. I believe I've said it before, but we will likely not be able to get exactly one-to-one with where water was. There's just been numerous changes to how water gets rendered that makes that currently unfeasible. But we try to get as close as we possibly can. This is not the end of the water changes. A lot of those are, the rest are likely getting pushed into our next release. But yes, please feel free to go through and give that a spin. Let people give it a shot. Let us know how the performance is. All that good stuff. No date as far as when we're going to be pushing Forever FPS out as of yet. But as soon as we know something, we will absolutely let you guys know.
As soon as possible is the date in my mind, but yes. Yeah, thanks, Geens.
Yep.
Okay, so I guess it kind of takes us to open forum. In case there was anything that was missed in chat, feel free to bring it up again. Otherwise, open floor. What have we got, folks? Taru, I'm going to respond with the thing you'll probably get sick of hearing, which is put it in a canny. But earnestly, we've been prioritizing things that I think people find surprising, like bringing back Invisiprims. Yep, if you had asked me a year ago if we would be bringing back Invisiprims, I wouldn't have believed you.
Asked me a year ago, I would have said no. Which technically we didn't necessarily bring back Invisiprims, we just made a feature that happens to piggyback off of Invisiprims.
Right, water exclusion volumes.
Nope. Surfaces. Volumes are different and special and do not work how the current surfaces work. But also volumes require some server work, which, take a little bit.
Does that mean that we could actually live underwater and just put a water hidey thing around our house?
No, not exactly. So there's a subtle but important difference between exclusion surfaces, which I believe at this point we're just going to call it hide water, and volumes. So the surface stuff works pretty much exactly how, well, almost exactly how Invisiprims on water used to work, with some notable exceptions. You cannot have these things attached to your avatar. If you try, we won't even try to render them. They just won't work. They'll be invisible. And no rigged mesh is permitted on these guys either. So sorry for anyone who wants to use Animesh or have like little gremlins walking around through the water, making holes in them. Not a thing that we're going to support, unfortunately. Additionally, they won't work on the system avatar. For those who remember a brief period of time where we had Invisiprims in the deferred renderer, I want to say something like 15 years ago, and you remember how that would break shading? That no longer breaks anymore, so you got that. And they don't really work underwater how you would hope they would work. They only work on the water plane whenever you look at them from underwater. This seems to replicate the functionality of Invisiprims previously in the old forward renderer. Volumes work a little bit different. At least that's the intention. Once we can get to them, right now we have a lot of other things on our plate, so sorry, can't tell you when we're going to be able to get to it. That's the intention of that, is to basically cut out a chunk of the water in the fog, and only that chunk. That would be more what you'd be looking for, Sassy.
Yeah, thanks for the link, Inara. Tucker, regarding Apple Silicon, we have an internal test build of that, which runs really well on my M2 MacBook Air. I'd really love to get either a project viewer out or, if possible, an actual release out or a beta for native Apple Silicon support. The one thing that's proving the most difficult is our Havoc integration, which is kind of like, unfortunately, used by very little things in the viewer. It's used for mesh upload and it's used for nav mesh. But you can still test how everything else works natively, so that may still be really beneficial to get some feedback. Yeah, it performs pretty well.
We do have a branch somewhere with some Mac stuff that's been targeted at Forever FPS, but I mean, with how down to the wire we are right now, that's probably going to get bumped to the next release. Assuming we have time, that is, which hopefully we do.
Really fantastic if we could just remove the dependency on the client side for Havoc completely.
That would require a bit of extra work, though. We do have some dependencies for pathfinding here and there that become complicated.
Fortunately, it's one of those areas where we don't really have very good metrics, Beck, but it would be useful. One of the ideas that was floated by Rye was to replace the nav mesh generation with another open source library such as Recast that would allow us to just use some type of bog standard convex hull decomposition library for mesh upload, and then not have any dependency on Havoc for the nav mesh, and hopefully come up with a better solution for a lot of the nav mesh generation. Yeah, Quinn, that's one of those things where if we're following a model where we try to do a lot of prediction client side, we would need to have a matching physics engine version. But because Second Life is so server authoritative, we don't need to have the physics library on the client for much of anything.
Yeah. For those who remember High Fidelity, at High Fidelity we used a different hybrid model where everyone predicts their own physics simulation at the client, but then one person's physics simulation is authoritative. That's a pretty modern technique, but applying that to Second Life is difficult to imagine in terms of how many changes it would make. Right now, you know, we're a server-only physics engine.
I have to change the subject for a second because I'm having some sort of a mental breakdown because I just downloaded the new beta Firestorm. Is typing above your heads when you're typing new? instead of just the dots because I do the bubble thing? Or am I just like not looking high enough? Because you're all lower than me and I've not. I'm talking about the dot 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 to let me know somebody's typing. I love that. I use that, but all of a sudden you all had typing above your head. The word typing was appearing. Is that new, Beck? No, Firestorm. Yes, but is the word typing new? I've never seen the actual word before, just the dots. Oh, when I logged in the new beta, all my settings were all messed up, so it could be that. Okay, never mind. I'm just having a morning with all these changes. Yeah, I do that. I just mean the actual physical word typing was appearing above everybody's name that was typing just then, and I've never noticed that before, just the 3 dots. Seeing both.
I really like that feature and wish we had it in the upstream viewer.
You do have bubble chat in the regular viewer, you just broke it.
Right. Well, I mean specifically the typing indicator because I don't want text to kind of pile up, though it's useful at times, but the indication that someone is typing is useful.
No, but you do. It just broke toasts and everything. That's one of my canny things, and one of my complaints for years with Veer was that I couldn't see toasts. I thought that we didn't have that option in the SL viewer, and it ended up being that if you had bubble chat active in the regular viewer, it killed everything else. So it's been broken for like 2-3 years now. No. Yeah, it just means that you don't have toasts. If you turn it off, then you get all your toasts and everything, and pop-ups. Yeah, because with that functionality, Whirly, in the other viewer, I can't. You don't know that you've gotten an IM. Unless you actually open up the IM box, because you don't see local chat, you don't see the IM pop-ups, you don't see anything if you've got bubble chat active.
I think one of the things that we need is a way to identify what issues in GitHub out of the 700 plus that we have we'd really love help with. Just a label or something would be useful. I know there's a help needed label, so maybe we need to put that on more items. Crush, are you talking about the hundreds of items on feedback.secondlife.com or the hundreds of items on the GitHub? Okay, at feedback.secondlife.com.
Well, you see, Quinn, if you look at the proposal that Signal had posted, A bounty program is not out of the question, but we'd have to, consider various different criteria for bounties and such. Usually bounties are doled out for, significant things that we want to have done, but, can't due to time constraints and security issues. So
I think we also used to give out shirts.
yes, we did, and other merchandise as well. I still have my old I contributed to Second Life t-shirt somewhere in a box. Right, the credits as well. Can't forget about that.
I don't think I've seen that one.
We also used to have a laser pointer.
Monty, I think my favorite employee swag was the Linden Lab cheese board. That one's still my favorite.
I want a Linden Lab cheese board. I guess just probably not a bad broader question, like what kind of swag would people like to see for, their contributions in, I guess, any form, really.
What about a region with plaques? That'd be kind of neat.
Like plaques of people who have contributed in various ways.
Yeah,
Really?
and put them into sections and make it some sort of a really nice landscaped walk through where people could go and visit and, check out the people that have contributed, and maybe it could, have a sort of a hover tips kind of thing that lets you know what they did and why and stuff like that.
I know, it's funny.
A thank you garden.
It's funny that you mentioned that amphitheater towards the center of the region. There was an idea of that was kind of forming a very, very long time ago, but it just never really, I guess, got the TLC that it really needed.
You could have a wish list. What's select behind door number 1, 2, or 3?
Pick wrong, and all you get is a T-shirt.
I want the ability to bring back all my deleted inventory. My beta grid inventory is 600,000. This inventory is 400,000. I want those pieces back. Timeshare regions, there you go. Everybody gets 2 weeks a year.
I had tried to push for AI-based ponies, but I don't know if they ever materialized.
I mean, I can tell you about a few pony regions, but I don't think those are the kinds of ponies you want.
I know those regions. I took a podcast from real life into one just recently.
Neat.
You know, all the splash pages and everything on the viewers have all improved. Like the Second Life one's improved. Firestorm's always done a really great job at that. Would there be any possibility, I don't know anything about coding or anything, to maybe create your own dashboard, like your own login screen, by selecting the things that are most important for you to see on login?
That, I mean, so whenever you see the login screen, like you're not logged in, so you
Right.
know you haven't authenticated.
But I just mean sort of like if you choose that it's more important for you to see the events and maybe what's happening on the blog than it is to see something else that might be there and not as important to you. So you can sort of select and maybe get a few more things on there because people could pick and choose.
Sassy, I would interject along with that good point that the reason we can't get to that faster, and this is one of the things we're trying to address with both the mobile client and Project Zero, is that that kind of welcome screen should be done with modern UI elements so that many developers know how to change it, or even, in the Second Life open source case, if you want to build a new UI around it. And one of the things we're doing with Project Zero is creating a web-based React UX framework that we can use to replace one-by-one items in the UI. Our UI was written in a language that we created, way back when we launched, 2003-4 timeframe. And that, unfortunately, is still the UI language, basically, for the viewers. So that's why we don't do things like this faster. We've got to get to something where a developer coming in who doesn't know Second Life could actually make changes to UI elements, and presently that's just not at all true.
Ah, okay, that makes sense.
that does make me think that one thing we could consider is open sourcing the splash screen itself.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it seems logical. I mean, you should be able to modify that. I wanted to go back to text on a prim. Can anybody add some color to that one? I'm trying to remember the history of wanting text on prims and what the pros and the cons are of it. If I remember, it's complicated.
Yeah, so the issue that was linked is actually one that I wrote up, which is that in the past we've talked about how difficult it is to display text on a prim in Second Life. People make, XY text and all these permutations thereof, improvements upon that library to display text on faces. One of the things that I was really inspired by is seeing the solution they used for PlayStation 4's Dreams, where they have a very simple text display method. It's basically, display this text on a face and make it bold and make it this color. And that's, pretty limited in scope. It's not like we're giving people the ability to construct their entire, a whole UI or replace HUDs somehow. But we could add some LSL functions that would allow you to basically render text on a prim, and these could be rendered on the client using SDF or some other type of font rendering method that's pretty efficient.
It's got a lot of votes.
Yeah, I have some additional ideas on that. I mean, SDF is definitely a way to go on that. Definitely just getting those basics down. I want to have text on this face or something like that. That would be super important. Mention SDFs are generally straightforward to generate client side as well, so less things we have to store on the server and send to the viewer.
Signal, Gaines and Worley, I don't know if it's okay for me to kind of add a topic here, but I just thought of it, and given this group and all the developers, it seems like an appropriate thing to bring up. We have been trying to understand lately what various phishing techniques can be used to acquire names and passwords from people. We've had as we blogged about a couple of days ago, we've had a somewhat higher level of what we internally refer to as account takeovers, where somebody's lost their password somehow and there's been a compromise to their account. We generally will put the account on hold, investigate, and then help the original account owner change their password or whatever. The question I have for this group is ideas about reducing the risks of these attacks. One vector that seems fairly obvious is the use of clicking on a link in, like, say, a group chat, where the link is basically masquerading, in a usual phishing attack vector, it's masquerading as our marketplace or something like that. Yeah, thank you, Quinn. Do folks have a feeling of how often that type of attack is happening? One thing as developers we could do is redact some links. I think I put a feedback item in about this in a somewhat different context, but just opening that for any thoughts that people have here, because if you can help us reduce those attacks, obviously it would be great, and we will do it. By the way, on those fake marketplace links, I'm wondering, does anybody here know if there's a regexable trace that I could look for in chat on that? Because obviously it's not going to say marketplace.secondlife.com, since that would be legit. Is there a common text thread that is often used in that type of an attack that we could look for? Maybe I may be asking for something folks on my team already know, but if so, I'm sorry.
I think I put an abuse report through the other day of one that happened in group chat. Abuse reports would be the best way to find those, I think, because I think we tell most people to do it under fraud money as the drop down for abuse reporting it. So they should actually have the links showing up in the group chat.
Money, huh? Okay, thank you. That's helpful, Sassy.
No worries.
Yeah, I think we'd have some list of previous domains, Philip, that our support staff would be able to get to. One solution that I see on sites like Yelp or in Discord is that there's a list of trusted domains and untrusted domains, much like some of the controls around Parcel Media, where if you click a link, it could tell you that the domain is not trusted. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, that's a good question. And then also Crush's example here highlights something that I'm not sure I understand. Right, Crush, right, okay, I see Crush. Crush just put up a link whose highlight and its link are different. Right.
Right, but
I
what if
wonder,
instead of...
uh,
So if you click that, like, instead of directly opening that link, what if it opened up a dialog that told you the link you were going to go to and then asked you whether you wanted to follow it?
right, that could be an example of a solution. We could also just not allow the link highlights to be different from the link itself, right? That would be another way to go, where a hyperlink couldn't be done as a link. As I didn't know we did it so richly. Thank you very much for showing me that. I thought it was just a link, duh. So we could think about maybe just eliminating that feature altogether. I'm not sure, Crush, if you would accept that, like if we just eliminated that feature altogether, if you will, so that the link has to be expressed as a link.
Actually, here's something that I've seen done in other places. Like when you click on a link, it just doesn't open things for you like automatically. You just get a dialog box saying exactly what the link is. You're presented with an OK or cancel button.
Yeah, I think that's what Signal just said, Gaines. I think that makes sense.
Sorry.
Yeah. That's an extra click, which as a designer I don't really like, but we've got to address this stuff and keep everybody safe. So that'd be our priority.
Yes, Kerry kind of takes priority over that.
I think giving the owners of a group the ability to just make it themselves and moderators only as well is still a good idea, because some people just don't want that kind of thing that isn't what their group is supposed to be in the first place. So it just, starts to get out of hand with link sharing. Some people just don't want it. So if you give them that control, and even if it was a group setting, so you know how you can give certain roles different things, well, another role could be, trusted members of the group could get that role ability.
That was the one that I think you prompted me to put in feedback, right? We can certainly prioritize that and get it done. I think, though, for account safety, I mean, the other way to combine what Signal suggested, since folks are saying we still need to keep the link highlighting thing, another thing we could do is if the link, we could do that second pop-up only if the link and its display do not match, right? It'd be kind of interesting. We could only do the extra pop-up step that Signal and Gaines suggested in the cases where the link itself is not visible in the click tag, in the click text.
I keep saying I'm hallucinating. Beck, wasn't this something you were working on before? I seem to remember like about 2 years ago or something, every time I went to do something in IM, it would break what I was doing. Isn't link something you were working on at one point? Mimi. Actually had a 14-year-old account IM me once when that phishing thing went through the other day and said, "Oh no, I clicked it, what should I do?" Is there a way we could just make that splash page thing really obvious as well? Like keep letting people know to not do it? It's really sad that somebody 14 years would still fall for that. But Crush, you're only talking about 3 groups in people's stratosphere. You're not talking about the hundreds of groups that we're all in that have nothing to do with those groups. Store groups are the ones that are the most often hit, and the store groups are very much moderated. And there's no reason that Friends of Philip, being Philip is the owner, can't add some moderators of trust, even if they're just moles. That means only moles could share links, etc.
I mean, I agree with that in principle. Sassy, I think the comment of adding a group role for it is appropriate, and that's a wonderful idea. As others said, though, some of the larger pre-existing groups for which perhaps the admins are gone or something would be not protected by that, since the new role couldn't be added.
Right, but I mean, couldn't... sorry, I'm just not trying to criticize, but if a large group is still very much active, there's no reason that somebody couldn't put in a support ticket and get a Lyndon to look at that group and then maybe see that the owner has gone bye-bye, there are no moderators, and maybe consider adding some trusted individuals to become moderators with an eye on them over some time. There's no reason to not put in a process just because some people have old groups. That's all I was thinking.
I'm writing down what Big Balls said. Of course, that name was chosen to have me have this very moment.
And it's being filmed.
But that's a good point. Right. That I'm not sure. I think we have the mechanisms for that in place. So thanks for that suggestion. Repeating it, the suggestion was if we detect a very, very different geolocation than your normal account logins, we could throw additional barriers to access or something like that. I'm not. I guess I could ask this group to think out loud about what those barriers might be, though. What would be the safest way, or the way that wouldn't slow people down too much if it really was them?
Is there a way, you know how you years ago did the capped too many incoming things feature? Is there a way to maybe do that where somebody can't hit 30 groups in 5 minutes because that's what they're guilty of?
Yeah, I think I'm always less enthusiastic about those caps because it's just cat and mouse. They just are reverse engineered as soon as you do them. So you kind of end up looking like Google after 20 years. You know, you've got 200 million lines of code that you can't show anyone, which has all these little special case exceptions, you know, that do different things. But yeah, I think in principle, you're right. But I think you're right. In principle, we should be able to use even techniques like AI to look at patterns of use and suggest abusive, behavior. And obviously that can apply to moderation as well as to fraud and stuff. But I'm still wondering. I'm still wondering though, if we detected that you were probably logging in from somewhere far away and you hadn't done that before, what would we do? Yeah, we could do a verification code in your email, but in many cases we've not historically verified emails. That is probably just an artifact of Second Life being so old. But we have a fear that we might not be able to reach people.
You do verify emails now. Well, I mean,
We do, but we don't. Unless I'm mistaken, we don't force that verification for access. So we attempt to, and we note it, but we don't not let you log in if you didn't verify, I think. I'm not sure that's going to stay that way because it seems maybe a little too open.
I mean, the best practices are probably the solutions that have been arrived at by modern platforms that have a lot of investment behind their login, like Steam, right? Like Steam does a lot of checks if it detects that you're in a different location on a different machine. Yeah, a lot of times using the, code sent to your email, which requires a verified email address.
Yeah, I agree. We should look at best practice and try to copy it if at all possible. I would take this opportunity to also say that our documentation on MFA has not been as good as it could be. We're updating it. You can use the latest iOS password app to do MFA for Second Life, which is pretty nice. I'm using it right now for my account, and it works. You just fire at the you just fire at the QR code on the MFA page with your regular phone. You don't need to actually download an authenticator. Just FYI.
Yeah, I've been liking the one-time password functionality built into 1Password and LastPass because they can both store a login and then the associated MFA one-time password in the same kind of entry.
I had heard about that signal, but I hadn't really seen it in action. That does sound very cool.
I know this seems like a ridiculous step as well, but what if to join a group in some cases was tied to the land that the group was part of? Like, for instance, these people come in, they join 100 groups, they spam the 100 groups, they drop the 100 groups, they join another 100 groups, and so on. But what if you actually had to go to Beck's beautiful Bunions location to actually join her group? For you to be a member of that group, you had to join it at the place. Then it's this extra step that bots couldn't or wouldn't do, maybe? If the person nominated that to be the step that they wanted for group joining.
Yeah, I think that's a lovely idea, but unfortunately I think the problem is that for the cases where you're trying to use a group as a Twitter feed almost, trying to gather as many people as you can, people wouldn't do that, Sassy. So it's a cool idea, though. I like the idea of having to get to a group. Yeah, CAPTCHA signal. That's an interesting point. Could do that.
It would just be, sorry, Chrissy, it would just be if they designated it that way. Like, it would be an option in when you're setting up a group, whether you want it to be that they have to go to your land to join it, or you can just join it. I was just thinking it was an extra security measure.
Well, this has been a pretty fruitful conversation, so thanks everyone for your feedback and ideas. I think we're at time, so you're certainly welcome to hang out in the parking lot afterwards and chat. Philip, thanks for joining us. Geens, everyone, thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Appreciate your time.
Yep. Have a great day.
Thanks for all the new thoughts on security. It's great. Thanks.
Thank you, Pantera, for filming us. Thanks, Signal. That was a great meeting.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot being a lurker.